Welcome to the NNBN podcast, talking with businesses, charities and organisations across Northamptonshire.
Sponsored by Poppy Design Studio. Find us at poppydesignstudio.com.
So today I'm joined by Sarah Hayle, who is the Chief Executive of the Community Law Service here in Northamptonshire. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you very much.
So tell us all about yourselves. Tell us what the Community Law Service is all about and you know, what you do in the county.
So we're a registered charity and we provide free, independent and confidential advice to the public, predominantly in Northamptonshire, but we do some work in county courts in Peterborough and Milton Keynes. And we provide advice on what we call social welfare law. And I can give you some examples in a little while of exactly what we mean by that. But the headlines are that we deliver debt advice, welfare benefits advice, advice in around housing in respect of eviction and repossession or people at threat of those. We deal with a lot of people who are experiencing fuel poverty and energy advice. And we also provide immigration advice as well. Our organisation is what we call a specialist casework organisation. What that means is we provide end-to-end advice and work with someone from beginning to end of their inquiry. We're a quality assured organisation. We hold the Lexel Quality Mark, which is the Law Society's legal practice quality mark for client care and good practice management. And we're also regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority and the Office of the Immigration Services Commissioner. So just to give you a flavour of our activity, in 2022-23, we supported just shy of 20,000 people across the patch. Each year we produce an annual report. They're all available on our website. And we supported people to secure an additional £7.6 million worth of welfare benefits. And we also helped our clients to manage debt, which totalled £20.9 million. And we represented at just shy of 800 court hearings.
Wow, that's quite some considerable numbers you just mentioned there. And yeah, I mean, obviously people do find themselves in these situations, don't they? And it's great that you're here to be able to offer that help and support and that advice. Talking about some of the advice that you do offer, do you want to talk through some examples of the kind of advice you offer?
Yeah, sure. So our debt advice team are able to offer the full range of debt services. So they can do everything from helping people review their income and expenditure and producing what we call a financial statement, so a sort of a budget plan. We will negotiate with creditors, advise people on what is a priority in terms of their debts and what isn't. We will put forward proposals to creditors in writing and get payment plans agreed. But we can also go right through to supporting people who wish to explore insolvency, so things like debt relief orders and bankruptcy. And our debt advisors are able to manage those insolvency solutions for people. And some people who come to us for debt advice need court representation. Perhaps they're challenging liability for a debt, for example. So the full range of debt counselling services. Moving on to welfare benefits, we do a lot of work with people to help them to dispute decisions. So perhaps they've been refused a benefit, or they've been told that they've been overpaid a benefit, or there is some sort of issue with their benefits. We will write letters on people's behalf, explore the options, give them advice on what their entitlements are. And we can also support people with social security tribunals if it goes as far as an appeal. Our housing advice tends to be very focused on eviction and repossession. So we do a lot of work in courts where people are in there because they are at risk of losing their homes. And that's very much something that I want to advocate for, that we are here and can help people with court hearings. But what we really want is to get people earlier in the process. So if people have got a notice, giving them information about there's court proceedings commencing, anything that puts their property at risk, then our housing advisors are able to support people with that. And that's very much focused on the tenant or the owner-occupier rather than the landlord or the lender. So we're very much about tenants or owner-occupiers. Our fuel poverty services is quite broad. It covers debt advice, benefit advice, but it also deals with making sure people know how to use their energy in the most efficient way, checking whether people's homes are as warm and sort of draft free as possible, helping people to get control of their household finances and reduce their energy costs as much as they can. So that's very broad, the fuel poverty services that we deal with. And we work closely with colleagues in the locality who can provide practical in-home assistance as well. And we have access to more emergency funds. So if people have got a broken boiler or no heating, there may well be things that we can do to support people with those. And then finally, our immigration advice service, that really is sort of generic immigration advice. So it might be advising and supporting people with Home Office applications, or advising them on their rights and their options in terms of regularising their immigration status. So again, that's quite a broad area of work.
So there's quite a few areas that you're covering there, and some of the advice you're giving is obviously quite essential for people, especially in where we find ourselves at the moment on the back of quite a few years of turbulence is what I normally look at with the pandemic and how that's impacted on people's lives. Let's just talk about the debt advice briefly. Am I right in thinking this is personal debt, or is this to do with business debt? What sort of debt advice are you actually giving on that?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good point to pick up on. It is personal debt. So it might be that we're dealing with both members of a couple in respect of some debts that are impacting them both, or it might be just an individual. But we deal with all range of personal debt, but it is not business debt. So that's quite an important point to get across. Yeah.
And with debt, I mean, obviously people find themselves in debt for different reasons. Obviously, there's the flamboyant lifestyle versus, the job loss, which, we do hear a lot of. And I'm assuming most people are coming to you because they've had a change of circumstance in their life.
Yes, a high number of people that we see suddenly find themselves in a new set of circumstances, one that they perhaps didn't foresee. So it's not generally about people living sort of flamboyant lifestyles. It's about people who have been working hard, had a good salary, but perhaps have quite reasonably taken out some credit whilst they were working and able to service that, and then a sudden job loss or the need to stop working to care for a loved one or a health issue themselves. So it's often change of circumstance which will bring people to us, and that's certainly the case for some of our other services as well, the welfare benefits and the fuel poverty services, and indeed housing. So often a change of circumstance that bring people to us, unfortunately. Yeah,
it's incredible. I mean, I think we've all experienced some form of change in our life with a job loss or something like that, and that has impacted on lifestyle. It's impacted on what we've current commitments that we've got and things like that. But can you deal with things like where people have got maybe a personal car finance or something like that, and that is obviously a creditor to that person? Is that something you can step in and help with as well to engage, the car finance company, for example?
Yes. So we deal with all sort of creditors in terms of personal debt and liability. So yes, that's certainly something that we see quite a lot of. And I think just thinking about the types of people that we see, there's certainly more people who either have recently been working or are still working and on a low income and come to us for advice. We're seeing more and more now people with income that simply doesn't match even their most essential expenditure. And so it really is very, very tough for people.
And you mentioned the word budgeting. You actually are able to help them to maybe get the finances under a little bit more control through an external support in helping people to budget in a different way. Is that right?
Yeah. So, I mean, the starting point for all of this is to always look at what people's income is and make sure that they are getting all the income that they should be, because billions go unclaimed in welfare benefits every year. So that's really important. And then the next step from that is reviewing what expenditure people have. So we will always guide and advise people. And it's a good practice for us all to do, isn't it? Just to periodically take an assessment of, okay, what am I spending each month? And, is there anything there that I really shouldn't be now? So we will support people to do that. We also find that sometimes people are paying more to one creditor who perhaps shouldn't be a priority, but they've perhaps put the most pressure on them and somebody's agreed to make a higher level of payment than in reality they should have done, and that's totally understandable. So we will help people to reassess all of that and prioritise their debts and look at, once all the essential expenditure is set aside, what is left to service debts and who is the priority and who should be treated equitably. So all of your priority debts obviously need equal treatment, etc. So we will guide people through all of that process.
Brilliant. And talking about the fuel poverty, I mean, obviously we've seen a turbulent year with the energy prices. It's affected us all. We've all got a little bit more acute to switching the heating on and putting extra layers of clothing on and everything. But how has it actually impacted the county from what you've seen?
Well, I think it has a significant impact, but it has a higher level of impact on the people that are on the lowest incomes often. They will often be the people with health problems, so they will all often be more significantly impacted by living in a cold home. They're less likely to have a good income and therefore are less likely to put their heating on or be more concerned about that. And there has been a bit of a trend where people have started to ask for their gas connection to be capped, and that's not something that we would advocate. What we want is for people to come and get advice to see if there's anything that can be done. Is there a different way they can use their energy? Have they got some energy debt that we could perhaps support them with an application to a trust to get that written off to give them a clean start? Or, do they need debt advice just to clear debts so that, again, they're in a better financial position? Or sometimes people's homes are cold and drafty, and actually working with partners, we could perhaps get some minor works done in the home, which would have a real impact. Things like radiator foils down behind radiators, low energy light bulbs. These can all make small but helpful changes for people. So, I think really we want to make sure that we're really getting out there to the most vulnerable in our local community and getting them to come forward and seek advice, because there may well be things that we can do to improve the situation, because the excess winter deaths every year are alarming, and so people that have got health problems really should not be living in cold homes, and we really want to talk to those people.
And when it comes to the advice you give it, I'm right in thinking that this is a free service that people can inquire and talk to you about confidentially about their situation.
Yes, absolutely. We are a completely independent and confidential and free service. As I said, we're quality assured, so people can have confidence in us. We're independent, so although we have funding from lots of different sources, some of which are local or national government, some of which are grant givers and trusts and what have you, we're not indebted or committed to those funders in as much as they don't have any impact on the advice we give. It's completely independent, and any reporting that we do back to funders is completely anonymised. So we are free to act completely independently, and we are not, not controlled in any way by any of our funders. So it is completely free and independent, and people can have confidence to come and talk to us in that way.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the funding. Obviously, your free service, isn't it needs to be funded in some way, doesn't it? And you just explained some of it, but you mentioned about the independent funders. Are these just trusts that are willing to, or able to help support, people in the situation they find themselves in?
Yes. So as a charity, it's up to us to find our own income. And the way we do that is by applying for grants and contracts that are available to us. So that relies on grant making authorities to make them available to us. So we do have quite a number of funders who are independent grant making bodies. For example, the British Gas Energy Trust is one of them. Not in any way related to British Gas in terms of we don't need to push people towards changing to British Gas. They just have a completely independent energy trust, and they fund many independent advice agencies across Britain. So they fund us, and as do the Access to Justice Foundation. We've been fortunate to be supported by Northamptonshire Community Foundation. So some of them are big national trusts, some of them are much smaller grant making bodies, and then we also get funding from West Northamptonshire Council and North Northamptonshire Council. And we also get funding from the Legal Aid Agency, so that's more of a sort of a central government thing. So all of our funders are on our website. If people wanted to take a look, they are absolutely free to do so. But, just to stress again, we are completely independent, and our funders fund us to do particular activities. But the advice that we deliver is all completely independent. But I think I'd just like to sort of give reassurance that it looks like we've got a lot of funders, and I don't want people to be concerned about, I don't know if this funder would help me or that funder would help me. People that come to us don't need to worry about that. We will assess if we're able to support somebody, and we will work out what funding stream they go through, and we'll tell people what funding stream is funding the work we're doing with them, but they don't need to worry about which one do they fit into. They just need to contact us.
And when you say about the funding stream that they fit into, is there X amount of funds for X amount of people, or is it a case of you just got to look at what's coming through the door to manage the funds that you've got available to support that service?
It's quite a variety, really. So some of our funding is quite specific to do specific activities. Some of it is a bit more generic, and it's just to provide, for example, welfare benefits advice. So that gives us quite a broad spectrum and some flexibility. So we try not to be too specific when we're looking at securing funding, because we want to be able to be an agile organisation and respond to the needs of our local community. So a lot of our funding will sort of be quite generic in terms of it will just be to deliver a particular type of advice. And we would normally give our funders an idea of approximately how many people we think we could see with their funding, and even potentially what outcomes we would expect. But obviously this can never be an exact science. So it's about keeping it as broad as possible so that we can meet the need that we see coming in.
So, talking about the uniqueness of the community law service, how do you stand out from others that are out there offering, similar sort of service to yourself? What makes you different from what is out there?
So we think we do offer a unique service in this locality. We offer holistic advice, which is end to end. So we cover a broad range of subjects, which often are all interlinked. The advice we give is end to end. So if somebody comes into our advice centre and has an appointment with one of our advisors, that same advisor will work with them from the beginning to the end of their inquiry. And so that enables a positive working relationship to build. Our advisors will progress their case regularly. They will write letters on their behalf, and they will proactively work to resolve the case for the individual. We confirm all of our advice in writing. So at the outset of a case, people will get a detailed letter of advice setting out what they've told us, what advice we've given, and what the next steps are. And we also provide that sort of same written update as key stages through the case are reached. So people will have regular updates in writing, which is really helpful because a lot of the things we see are very complex. People come with multiple issues. Often they're vulnerable, but not exclusively. It might be that they've just got a lot going on in their life. So having that written confirmation is very helpful because they can refer back to it. We also offer a lot of court representation, do a lot of social security tribunal work, and we're also part of large regional networks, so predominantly working across the East Midlands. So we're part of a large group called the East Midlands Money Advice Group, and we are a cohort of expert debt advice agencies delivering the government's money and pension service debt advice. And we're also part of the East Midlands Immigration Network. And we are one of 3 hubs in the East Midlands who can deliver high-level, high-quality immigration advice. So we collaborate a lot with colleagues and partners across the region to try and make sure that we are building capacity, supporting other organisations and making sure that those in our community get the advice that they need.
And when it comes to sort of specific issues that are out there at the moment, what are sort of the main issues that are impacting the people who are coming to see you on a regular basis or just coming to make inquiries with you?
I think for me, there's 2 key things at the moment, and obviously this does change as the months and years pass. But at the moment, we've seen a significant increase in court hearings in respect of housing. So through the pandemic, obviously all evictions were suspended, so there has been a backlog. So we did expect to see a jump. But just to give you an idea, October to December in 2022, our housing court duty scheme supported 141 people. But in October to December in 2023, we saw 225 people just in that 3 months. So that's a 60% increase. And last year, globally, we saw 778 people that we represented in court for a housing issue. But already 3/4 of the way through this year, we've given representation at 924 court hearings. So we have seen a significant increase in people who are needing representation in court in respect of their housing. So I think my message in respect of that is there's a lot that we can do if we can catch people a bit earlier on in the process. We're of course there for them when they get to court. We have somebody on duty in the court who they can see on the day, even if they've never contacted us before. But, people will have gone through a lot of stress and worry up until the day of their court hearing. So what we really want to do is to get people to come to us as soon as they're notified, as I mentioned earlier. So, that's my plea. So that's the first significant issue, I think. And then the second one, which is just going to start to impact people across Northamptonshire, is a change to people who are claiming just tax credits. So a lot of people who are perhaps working and the only benefit they claim is tax credits are going to be told from this month, well, from January, in fact, it started, that they need to change onto universal credit. So this is the government's sort of new means tested benefit for working age people. And until now, although we've had universal credit around for a long time, people who were on the old benefits were never bothered by universal credit. But from January, the government are now telling people on tax credits that they now must claim universal credit. And if they don't, their tax credits will stop. So that's going to start impacting people and is going to be something that's going to build in the coming months, I think. So, you know, I think if people are concerned about this, there are helplines, there's information. We've quite recently put something on our Facebook page about it, and we've put a fact sheet on there as well, because there is a helpline, and as I say, we've produced this fact sheet. But the message to people that get a letter telling them that they need to claim universal credit, I think what I want people to take from that is they do need to take action. Because if they ignore that letter and don't claim universal credit, their tax credits will stop. And the letter will give them all the details they need about any deadlines and when they need to do that and how they need to do that. So that's a really important thing that's going to build over the next few months.
And what about any sort of other key messages that you'd like to get out there? Because obviously, what we're talking about here is obviously people that have found themselves in a position in life that can produce extra stress, extra pain, you know, possibly marriage breakups, relationship breakups, but also, you know, impact on mental well-being as well. So is there any sort of message that you'd really like to deliver to people to say, look, you know, we are here, this is what we do, and well, obviously you just explained a lot of that, but, you know, we are here basically, but is there anything else you wanted to share today?
Yeah, I think the we are here is really, really important. We often see people come to us at the very last minute. Maybe they're in court the next day, or they're going to be evicted the very next day, or they've got bailiffs on the doorstep, or their benefits stopped ages ago. And as a result, they've been living in a terrible situation with, you know, no heating, very little food, etc., etc. So, you know, I think seek advice sooner rather than later. You know, things can escalate if you leave it. Let's get it sorted out for you sooner rather than leaving it until it's at crisis point, because we don't want people being at crisis point. That causes huge amounts of stress for them. And what it also means from a selfish point of view is our advisors are then running around trying to resolve things at the very last minute, which, you know, we can potentially do, maybe not 100% of the time. So, you know, it's really important that as soon as people think they need advice, that they contact us, and that way, hopefully, we can stop escalation in their problems and deal with things sooner. And you know, we're here to empower people, to support them, to take them on that journey. And as I say, we're a casework service, so your advisor will continue to work with you from beginning to end. So, you know, there's no judgment, no stigma. It's just, you know, we're here, we're open, we will give honest and genuine advice. And please contact us if you think you need us.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, we'll come to the contact details in a minute of how people can contact you. But am I right in thinking that some of the challenge that yourselves face is people obviously feel that they're in that situation, they don't know who to turn to, but also it's kind of a big step for people to actually make that call or come through the door to come and talk with you. Is that a fair thing to say?
I think it is, yes. Often, as we said earlier, people have never been in this situation before, and they might feel some embarrassment or some reluctance to come forward. You know, genuinely, we deal with this type of thing every day. We're not here to judge anybody. We just want people to come forward and get advice. And, you know, I think once people have come to us and used us once and have met us and know that we're a friendly bunch and just here to serve our local community, I think people then have the confidence to come back. We have a huge number of people that come back to us for years and years and years because they know that they're not going to get judged. They're just going to get the help and support that they need. So that initial step is a scary one for some people. Totally understand that. But, you know, please be reassured, we are here and there's no judgment.
And can people inquire initially anonymously? Can they just pick up the phone and say, look, I've got a situation here, so they can get a bit of advice? Or do they need to sort of come and see you first to get that support moving?
So we deliver our advice in a number of different ways. So we have a telephone line that's open 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, and they can certainly pick up the phone and just ring that number and say, is this something you can help me with? And our receptionists will explain what we can offer and how we can do that. And then people can make a decision about how they'd like to proceed or if they'd like to proceed. We also offer drop-in advice services. So at Northampton Guildhall, through the week, we do offer drop-in that people can turn up to. But as soon as we get to the point where we're starting to give advice, we do usually ask that we take some details for everybody's benefit, because we want to be able to be assured that we've got an audit trail, that we can see what people have been told. We don't generally have problems further down the line, but if there were any, or we wanted to look back, or the person that's come to us wanted to look back on what they'd been told, we do tend to keep records. But obviously people can give their consent or not to doing that. So, we're not here to force people to do anything. So if people wanted to drop us an email or wanted to ring us and just make some initial inquiries, that's fine. But as soon as we get into giving advice, that's where we start to want to have some details. But it's all completely secure. We don't share the data with anybody. It's completely independent and confidential. So it doesn't go anywhere.
Sarah, thank you for joining us. I think it's really important to have this conversation and continue the conversation around, support people can actually receive and actually have in the area, because we're quite right. People don't know who to turn to sometimes, don't know what to do. And obviously, these are obviously knocking on to mental well-being and some of the challenges people are facing in their lives. But how can people actually find you? Have you got offices that people can just drop into that they can find? Have you got a website you can share that people can find further information on?
Yes, so all of the information is on our website, communitylawservice.org.uk. All of our contact details are on there. We do have a Facebook page and an X account, so people can find us at Community Law NN. People can ring us. We do have offices that are open. The main one where people can drop into is in Hazelwood Road in Northampton. But really, the best thing that people can do is to give us a ring if they'd like to, and they can get all those details from our website, or I can give you the number, which is 01604 621 038, and that line is open from 10 a.m. each day of the week.
Sarah, thank you for joining us. I really do appreciate your time. Thank you for obviously sharing that information with us. And you're a service that we kind of don't want to see, but you have to be here at the moment, isn't it? And it's just one of those situations we find having the service in the area that people need. But as I said, I felt it was important to continue the conversation around some of the help and support that is out there. So thank you once again for joining us.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.